Hi guys, so I was thinking about this scene in the iPad Got video relating to the chalkboard, and I was looking at the house on fire and the shark, and among all the other things that have been revealed with these two particular images on this chalkboard, I was thinking about the wildfires that took place in California last year and the hurricanes that involved flooding, so like water type event happening on the East Coast. So I went and I looked at the just checking out the information, like the wildfires that happened in California and the four hurricanes that came to the East Coast: Hurricane Harvey for Texas, Hurricane Irma for Florida, Hurricane Jose scrolled up the East Coast, and Hurricane Maria affected Puerto Rico and some of Florida again. So that just drew my thoughts to fire and water, similar to the kind of Game of Thrones theory, fire and ice. It's like that opposite thing, yin and yang. It all started to kind of have this kind of twin system, this opposing system, where it's like fire and water, fire on one side, water on the other side. So I was thinking about California, and I remember doing a video a while ago about the scene with the blue man dancing, and I've addressed it recently before as well. But I just wanted to kind of reiterate a point. I'm just going to bring it up somewhere. I always struggle to find this. 1 second, please. Somewhere around here. Here we go. Okay. So in this scene, the guy jumps out. He's got the star on the chest, which I've related to the Day of the Shining Star. That's already passed, so maybe it's not talking about that. The guy is wearing this frog mask, and he's kind of like dancing from side to side. What I kind of wanted to focus on, just going to speed this up a little bit. What I wanted to focus on is the masks he's wearing. So not only do we have like a tsunami submarine scene going on just there as those fins come up, but he wears the frog mask, then he wears the bear mask, and then he goes on to wear the bird mask, which I've also interpreted as having a connection to the JUCHE bird, and the 23 on his wings has been pointed out before by JK. So when I was thinking about all that, and California, and the fact that I've addressed this kind of thing before, where the California state symbols come up in order as the frog mask, the bear, and the bird. When you do take a closer look at the bird, you can see that even when you have a look at the mask, which is kind of black with white lines and this feather on top of the head, when you look at the bird itself, when you look at the bird itself, it's got this black face with the white lines and the feather on top of its head. So I've kind of drawn that as a direct connection to California. Not only that, but the bear symbol itself has a star next to it as well, which could refer to the star on this guy's chest. So you've got the star, the frog, the bear, the bird, and they all have associations with California. Not only that, but in the scene with the Antichrist burning the butterfly, I paused it as I was watching it, and I noticed that the butterfly shape, when it's burning, in this particular frame, so at 9:31 in this slow motion version of the video, you actually get the shape of a dog here. So some of you might be able to see it straight away, some of you may not. So for those of you that can't see it straight away, I've taken the liberty of outlining it in paint. And you can see obviously the nose, the ear, the head, the body, and the tail that comes up. And what stood out to me when I found that revelation in direct comparison with California is that, did I bring it up? Okay, yes, here. So in the list of state symbols, One of the other state symbols that California has is the dog-faced butterfly. Now, obviously, the butterfly in this image is not white, but I don't think that's the point. I think the butterfly burning, and while it's burning, having the outline of a dog has a direct link to dog-faced butterfly. So if you take away all the lines that I put in, you should be able to see the outline of the dog without the lines now. And you can see the butterfly still within that as well. So I think that's a reference to the dog-faced butterfly, and it's on fire. So that kind of gives me the indication that when we're looking at the iPet Goat video and we're looking at the chalkboard scene and we're seeing the house on fire and the shark representing submarine or water, it's saying to me that California is going to have the fire event. And because California had the wildfires and the East Coast had, so the West Coast had fires and the East Coast had events associated with water in terms of the hurricane and the flooding, it says to me that that was a precursor to something that's coming in the future. So a fire event on the West Coast of the United States and a water event on the East Coast of the United States. And when I was thinking about that, I started thinking about the dates that could possibly happen. And obviously, I've talked about the 17th and the 18th, and those dates have come and gone. Nothing happened. But in relation to the lunar calendar, 18 and 17 could be represented by the first lunar month and the 7th lunar day, and the first lunar month and the 8th lunar day, which is the 22nd and the 23rd. Now that stood out to me. Well, it has stood out to me. I've already made videos on the 22nd and the 23rd. But it stood out to me even more because when I started looking at the dates themselves, I wrote out a little kind of like timeline of possible events. So on the 22nd of February, 3 weeks into February, or 7 days plus 7 days plus 7 days, possibly Donald Trump getting shot on the 22nd of February. Why do I think that? And why do I keep talking about Donald Trump getting shot? It's because the iPet Goat video indicates that. And though it hasn't happened yet, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen in the future. And when we look at and when I keep 22nd of February in my mind, and I think about Donald Trump getting shot on that day, I remember, well, actually, let me just cover something else as well. So, Donald Trump getting shot, keep that in mind. I'll just put like a little asterisk next to it there. If Donald Trump does get shot on the 22nd of February, this would be 7 days, excluding the 22nd, 7 days after Nicolas de Jesus Cruz shot 17 people on the 14th of February, which was Valentine's Day. The name Nicolas de Jesus Cruz actually translates to victory people. Nicholas means victory people. De Jesus means of Jesus, and Cruz is cross. So victory people of Jesus cross. Now that could be taken in two ways. It could be taken as victory over Jesus on the cross, or the people have victory because Jesus went on the cross. The interpretation of that is subjective to how you want to look at it, but let's carry on. So 2 weeks before the 22nd, I don't know why I put 21st there. So 2 weeks before the 22nd, or 7 days plus 7 days, on the 7th of February, Nancy Pelosi, who's 77 years old, gave a record-breaking 8-hour speech about DACA. And I've spoken about DACA already and how I feel that the combination of the shooting in Florida and the issues that are going on with DACA and the connection to the name Jesus is going to lead to Donald Trump being shot by someone who either has connections with someone of Mexican or Spanish heritage, or someone who is of Mexican or Spanish heritage. the 22nd of February 2018 also breaks down to 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1 plus 8, which equals 17. And obviously I've done in my other videos the connection between 17 and 22. So 17 could also be interpreted as the first lunar month and the 7th lunar day, which I've already said, which corresponds to the 22nd of February when looked at on the lunar calendar. 22nd of February, 7th lunar day in the first lunar month. So that's how the 22nd and 17 appear to be connected. On the same day, there's a possible interpretation for the volcano erupting, Cumbre Vieja, which is in the Canary Islands, La Palma, in Spain. And when I think about that volcano erupting on the same day as Donald Trump getting shot, I'm referred back to the Time magazine, where they had this image of Donald Trump getting shot. Well, not Donald Trump getting shot, excuse me. They had this image of Donald Trump on fire, and that has a connection to me in terms of the fire could represent the explosion of the volcano, and it coming off of his head could represent Donald Trump having something to do with a head wound in terms of, being shot. Now, I don't think Donald Trump dies, but he is shot according to the interpretation. And then you've obviously got the time there, and up here in the corner you can't see it, and I've tried my best to make it visible as much as possible, but excuse me, using the wrong thing too much. So just here, the date on the magazine, the Time magazine, with this fire coming up, which could represent a volcano explosion on top of Donald Trump's head, which could represent a head wound. There is the date, which I pointed out before when I talked about this Time magazine, January the 22nd. And obviously I'm focusing on the 22nd of February, which is 1 month after this magazine is published, which appears to be, let me take it back up, which appears to have Donald Trump with his head on fire. The 22nd of February also has connection to President's Day, which is actually today, the 19th of February. But the celebration is about George Washington. George Washington's birthday is a United States federal holiday celebrated on the third Monday of February in honor of George Washington, the first president of the United States, who was born on February the 22nd, 1732. So again, we have a reference to 22 and to February directly. And could it be possible? I don't know what the years are from George Washington's birth up until the 22nd of February 2018. Why don't I have a look while I've got you here? So give me a second. This wasn't part of the video. So it's the 22nd of February, what was it, let's go back, 1972, something, 1732, I was way off. Sorry, 1 second. Up until the 22nd of February 2018. This might not reveal anything, but I just wanted to check. 104,449 days, or 286 years. Now, while I'm making this video, I can't think of any relevance that those numbers have, but I'm sure some of you guys out there who are connected with the numbers in the number system will be able to find out if there's any relevance for that date. But I can't see any at the moment. So going back to the timeline, so if Donald Trump gets shot on the 22nd and the volcano erupts on the 22nd, that could be the same day that the tsunami comes, which could be caused by the volcano eruption itself and its flank going into the ocean, or it could be caused by a nuclear or tsunami bomb, or it could be a combination of both. So at the same time, a nuclear submarine such as the Russian nuclear drone, which is nicknamed Canyon, could shoot a torpedo or detonate itself in Babylon Canyon, which is just east of New York, and that could either possibly generate a tsunami, or it could increase the tsunami that's already coming. which could have obviously connections with the tsunami and submarine. So something like a nuclear submarine detonating or shooting a torpedo which has a nuclear detonation could be connected to the tsunami, and that could be where we get the uranium which comes up in the boy's eyes. So in the tsunami waters, uranium is detected. The tsunami would affect, if it is coming from La Palma, the Cumbre Vieja volcano, then it could affect the entire East Coast, all along the Gulf Coast, up to Mexico, the east of Mexico. It could affect Britain, Spain, France, parts of the Middle East and Israel, Africa, the Caribbean, and a number of other, smaller islands in the Atlantic Ocean. On the 23rd of February, so the next day, this could be the day that North Korea decides to test its JUCHE bird, considering that America may be, dealing with a tsunami on its east coast. They might think it's an opportune time to test their JUCHE bird missile. But one thought I'm having is that the missile, when it comes out of North Korea heading into the Pacific, it could be intercepted on its way into the Pacific. And then, if they really wanted to start war, they could use the fact that North Korea has launched a missile into the Pacific, but it hasn't actually reached the Pacific, and they could launch another weapon. So basically, North Korea launched their missile, it's intercepted, but another missile is fired out in replacement. And as far as the population, the normal citizens are concerned, North Korea have launched a missile, but we don't know that it's been intercepted. So that missile eventually reaches California. Well, the missile they replaced it with has reached California. I'm thinking LA specifically, with a nuclear weapon. But it's not the missile that left North Korea. It's a replacement. Now, that would be the false flag, because they would use that as an excuse to tell the public that North Korea launched a nuclear weapon and it hit California, when in actual fact, North Korea launched a nuclear weapon into the Pacific, but it was intercepted, and another missile was put in its place that came from God knows who. So, in relation to California and LA, I was thinking about the LC scene, and the hidden A that they have between the L and the C. So I brought it up, I've talked about it before, and I brought it up just here so you can see. This is upside down, and just here in the ground, you can see they've got the A scratched in. You can't really see it when you're watching the video. Only when you increase the brightness of it, you can identify this A down here. And obviously, I've mentioned that could be a representation of 1 and 7, which is 17, and 17 has connection to 22, as we mentioned, in terms of the first lunar month and the 7th lunar day. It could be talking about La Cumbre volcano, as we have what appears to be a volcano on the apple before it splits. And we've got the representation of the letter V, which is also a connection to 22, but also the first letter of the word volcano, or vieja. It could also translate to LA, California. So, multiple layers in the video there, just on that one scene. I mean, I don't know how many times you can go back to that scene and interpret it in a different way, but that's part of why we kind of, look into these things. So, I've already pointed out the connection between the L and the C and the A possibly being California and LA, and I've already pointed out the connection to California with the state symbols of California being a frog, a bear, a bird, and them also having a dog-faced butterfly as one of their state symbols, and in the IPEC GOAT video, it appearing to be in the shape of a dog as the butterfly is burning, which could obviously give us a direct connection to dog-faced butterfly, which would give us to a link to California. And because the butterfly, dog face butterfly goes up in flames, that suggests to me that California is the one that is hit with a missile. And that again links back to the video in the classroom scene where we have the burning house, which appears to be on the left, which would be the west coast, and the submarine shark with water type connection on the east coast. So while the tsunami comes for the east coast, looks like maybe the 22nd, the same day that Donald Trump may possibly be shot, which has connections to President's Day and the day that George Washington was born. It all just kind of ties together in my interpretation. So if North Korea did fire their JUCHE bird into the Pacific and it was intercepted and a replacement missile was sent out, which hit California and then blamed on North Korea, I think China and Russia would be akin to that, and they would agree with North Korea that they didn't fire a missile at California, but the US and its allies, Britain, Canada, the rest, will be saying that North Korea fired the missile directly at California, which leads us to the IPEC Goat 2 scene with the boy's eyes for war coverage. I forgot to point out, obviously after the possible Donald Trump being shot and after the possible volcanic eruption and after the possible tsunami, or during those events, the stock market would obviously be affected and would plunge. And then it leads on to the 23rd of February, where these other events may take place. Now, that's the end of my video. Well, actually, it's not. That's just the end of my interpretation part of the video. It's an interpretation, so it's subjective. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's what I'm seeing from the IPEC Goat video. I'm not a prophet. I don't prophesy. I never say that these things are coming from God or I feel, like it's been sent to me from the Holy Spirit. This is just me thinking, looking at the video, thinking about it, trying to think outside the box, trying to connect the dots together, and coming up with the interpretations. All the events that are listed, we believe will happen, such as EMP, blackout, missile launch, something to do with submarine, tsunami, volcanic eruption, Donald Trump being shot. But it's just the dates that are the difficult one to pin down. And I keep trying to, because obviously if these things are going to happen, you'd want to know when. You'd want to have some indication as to when. So that's why I'm making this video for the 22nd of February and the 23rd of February to join on to the other video that I made for the 22nd and 23rd of February, just to point out all the indications that are there, which, as I've said, appear to have connections with the number 17 in terms of the first lunar month and the 7th lunar day, and connections with the number 18 being the first lunar month and the 8th lunar day. So with that said, the references that we have to the Time magazine and the Time's Up and H.R. McMaster saying decision time is near. We now have Rex Tillerson saying we don't know how much time is left on the clock. He says the US is nervous about North Korea striking with a nuclear missile, but vows to bring the Hermit Kingdom to the negotiating table. So it's kind of like the same kind of talk. We want to have this discussion. We want diplomacy. We want to be able to settle this peacefully. But at the same time, from each individual person, so from Lindsey Graham, for example, he was saying that US families shouldn't go on tour to South Korea with their partners. You've got H.R. McMaster saying decision time is near. You've got Rex Tillerson saying we don't know how much time is left on the clock. The doomsday clock itself has moved to 2 minutes to midnight. All these armies preparing, all this information sharing. It definitely feels like we're close. Definitely feels like we're close. Today is the 19th of February. The 22nd is on Thursday and the 23rd is on Friday. I can't remember where I heard it, but there's a phrase out there that it begins on a Friday. Some of you may know what I'm referring to, but I can't remember where I heard it and what it's connected to. But They said something begins on a Friday. And in terms of Albert Pike's war, with it beginning in the Middle East, I mean, that has just stepped up in the last couple of days, with Iran sending a drone into Israel territory, Israel shooting it down, then attacking the base it came from, then Syria's Air Force defenses attacking the Israeli plane which crashed, and then Israel sending squadrons to destroy 12 Iranian targets within Syria, and then Israel saying that, you know, they're ready to take on Iran by themselves if necessary, which they have changed their regulations to be able to do. And then you've got Assad forces and Hezbollah militias prepare for Iran-Israel war in Syria. The Syrian regime and Hezbollah have begun military preparations in Quintira's countryside amid fears that Daraa and Quintira will turn into an arena for an Israeli-Iran confrontation. Activists said regime forces and Hezbollah fighters stationed in several areas in Quintira's countryside are on security alert. They've been arming with heavy weapons and monitoring the area 20 kilometers off the borders with the occupied Golan Heights. According to analysts, there are 4 possible scenarios. The first scenario, which is most likely, is that the Syrian regime and the opposition will reach some sort of reconciliation. The opposition will stay in the area as a guarantee to prevent Iran and Hezbollah from approaching the borders. The second scenario is setting a de-escalation zone in South Syria while choosing a third party to supervise the monitoring checkpoints. The third one is that Syrian regime will control the entire area and Russia will play the role of guarantor while UN peace troops return to the border area. And the last scenario would be a direct confrontation between Israel and Iran, where the former launches airstrikes on regime forces and Iranian militias. And although it's the last scenario and the way they put it, the least likely, I feel that it should be the first scenario and the most likely, because that appears to be what is taking place now. That's the end of my video, you guys. So I just wanted to bring all that information to you and just share how it appears that a fire type event is predicted for the west coast of the United States, being California, and a water type event is scheduled for the east coast area, being New York, Florida, affecting areas as well like Texas and New Orleans and things like that. So you guys keep watch. I'll be keeping watch myself as always. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video. Thank you for leaving comments. Feel free to share and subscribe. And with that, you guys have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and God bless.